Hello, guys. We're going to talk about self love. Perhaps one of the most talked about ideas in our generation today. Self love is, you've probably seen it all over social media and YouTube alike. And some people absolutely love it and abide by it and swear by it. And others think it's the cringiest word ever produced in human history. But regardless, I think with the idea of self love our generation has come up with, I think we have it all wrong. We have it all wrong, and we've missed the point of it all entirely. Because a lot of us have used the idea of self love as if it were going to be this remedy for any feelings of worthlessness that we have, any feelings of guilt, any feelings of shame that we feel towards ourselves, or even self-hatred, negative self-talk, negative self-image, all of these things. And we're told to go on our self-care routines, to tell ourselves all these affirmations, to transform ourselves, to love our bodies no matter what, to love ourselves no matter what our character is like or what we do. You must love yourself always, and you must love yourself no matter what. And I think this is all great on paper, right? And a lot of the things that I mentioned are actually pretty good for you. But that just isn't how it works. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've done. No one loves themselves 24/7. And this is in my own experience and from getting to know a lot of people throughout my own lifetime. You're not always going to love yourself. There are going to be days where you trip and you fall and you make mistakes and you fail and you don't deal with those the way you would want to normally. There are going to be days where you feel hatred towards yourself, genuine hatred. There will be days where you feel pathetic and even disgusting. And sometimes these won't be in your control. Sometimes it's just your body's natural reaction to yourself. And that's really how it is. And it doesn't matter how good of a relationship you have with yourself. Because even in my own case, I would say I personally have a great relationship with myself. And even then, there have been a lot of times where I don't feel the best about myself. I don't treat myself with kindness, or I don't think the best thoughts. I don't feel the best things either. And sometimes when this happens, we can feel like there's something wrong with us, and we can feel bad about it. Because all this talk about self-love gives us the expectation that we're supposed to love ourselves always, no matter what. But again, that just isn't how things are. You're not always going to love yourself. But with all of that said, you can always choose yourself. And that's what loving yourself truly looks like. Because love isn't an everlasting feeling, it's an everlasting commitment to yourself. It means choosing yourself even when things get hard. It's choosing yourself even when you fail, even when you make mistakes, even when you trip and you fall, and even when you accidentally hurt people that you love, or even when you've done some really bad things in the past, right? It's making that choice to choose yourself even amidst all of those, because choice transcends thought and emotion. Love goes beyond what you're thinking and feeling in a given moment. And I think the clearest example of this is in our relationships with other people. Because, surprise, surprise, our relationship with ourselves is actually quite similar to our relationships with other people. And when it comes to our relationships with other people, you're not always going to love them or feel like loving them. You're not always going to feel the best things about them. Especially if you're dealing with a life partner that you have to go through life struggles with, right? You're going to feel hurt. You're going to feel angry at times. You're going to feel guilty and ashamed and sad and all of these things. It's not always going to be easy, but there's always that choice to commit to the other person, to work on that relationship with the other person. There's always that choice to treat them with kindness and to treat them with respect and to treat them well, just in general, right? It doesn't matter what you feel. There's always that choice. And it's the same when it comes to ourselves. There will be days where we don't feel the best about ourselves. There will be days where it will feel hard to love ourselves. There will be days where we may feel pathetic and ashamed and guilty and all of these things. But still, there's that choice. There's that choice to choose yourself and to treat yourself with kindness and to do something for yourself. And what this will look like will depend on the case that you're dealing with. It will depend on the context. Sometimes it's as simple as celebrating yourself, even when it may feel cringe to do so. Sometimes it's giving yourself some slack when you're not able to do something you needed to do by X time, or if you didn't do it up to a certain standard. At least you tried, right? Sometimes it's forgiving your past self for something that they did because they're doing their best and they had bad intel. And you can still do this even when you feel that guilt, even when you feel that self-hatred. You can always tell yourself, yeah, that's okay, I understand. Sometimes it's setting clear boundaries with yourself and fulfilling those. Saying no to things that you really don't need and you're just conforming to. At the end of the day, it's always that commitment to yourself and putting the work in. And that will always look different in a case-by-case basis. But at the end of the day, you're not always going to love yourself. But you can always choose yourself. There's always that choice no matter what. And it's important to know that not feeling the best about yourself is completely normal. Even in the case that you have a great relationship with yourself, it's going to be hard at times. And so you're going to have to make that choice. And in a way, love is a form of discipline because it takes doing the work even when you don't feel like it. To be loving to yourself entails being kind to yourself even when you don't feel like doing so. It entails celebrating yourself for the smallest things, even when it seems cringy. It entails forgiving yourself again and again for things that you feel deeply guilty about and feel deeply ashamed of. And that process may take some time. But again, at the end of the day, it's a process. Loving yourself isn't a result you achieve. It's a process you undergo for the rest of your life. And it's never going to stop. The work is never going to stop. And you always have to do what you can. And you always have to make that choice. So at the end of the day, yeah, you can't expect yourself to love yourself always, but you can always choose yourself and you can always do what you can. And I think it helps that in every moment you remind yourself, what would love do? Right? What would I do if I were dealing with my best friend right now? What does choosing myself look like in this given moment? Right? Just remind yourself of that always. Because you're not always going to feel like it, but if you ask yourself those questions, you're going to know what the loving thing to do in the moment would be. And that responsibility is yours as it is mine. And we can't just say we don't love ourselves as an excuse to treat ourselves like garbage. Because not everyone loves themselves, all the time. But the difference is that in those moments we don't love ourselves. Do we still make that choice? Do we still make that commitment to ourselves, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's not about loving yourself 24/7. It's not about having that perfect self-care routine that will cure all your guilt and all your body dysmorphia and all your shame and all of these things. It's really in those daily actions, those daily thoughts, those daily reminders to yourself, right? It's always in the little things, and it's something that you're going to do for the rest of your life. Self-love isn't a result, it's a process. It's a relationship with yourself, one that you continually need to work on, one that will experience breaks and falls, and it will weather storms, but again, there's always that choice. So choose yourself, back yourself, believe in yourself, and yeah, that's really just the main gist of this video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope that will help you in some way. Because during those times that you don't feel like loving yourself, that's normal, and that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, right? That's just the human experience. But I would encourage you to make that choice, of love, and to do what is loving in that moment. But yeah, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good morning, my fellow peasants.